Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another edition of Texas Insider TV. I'm Jim Cardle. We're pleased today to be able to visit again with State Senator Florence Shapiro from the 8th Senatorial District out of Collin and Denton counties. Senator Shapiro, you're chairman of the Senate Education Committee, but have also been involved in previous sessions with State Finance and the Finance Committee, and that's particularly what we want to visit with you about today. Senator, jumping right in, there's a lot of concern and people are speculating. We'll wait for the final numbers from the comptroller in January, but tell us what you're hearing in terms of projected shortfalls. Is it a shortfall? Is it a deficit? Give us an overview briefly to start out, if you would, about our Texas budget situation.
Well, I think we're all realistic. I think none of us will know the number until January when the comptroller actually gives us the final number. I have to put an optimistic note first. We are seeing the sales tax over the last 2 months slightly increase. That's an optimistic view, and I'm hoping that that will be the sign for the next several months, knowing that the budget that we're going to do in January 2011 doesn't start until September, and it's for 2012-2013. So we hope that we'll start seeing this uptick. It may not be significant, but it's going to show a steady increase. We're very hopeful. That being said, and that being the first thing I said, I am an optimist at heart, but I truly believe we have about an $18 to $20 billion shortfall. It's not a deficit, it's a shortfall. I think there's a big difference between those two. Deficit says that you have to spend that money. Shortfall says we're not going to spend the same amount of money that we did the last 2 years. Shortfall says we'll reevaluate some of those programs. We'll look at some of the things we've done and reevaluate them. So I think that's a really important terminology difference, and I think the shortfall is really what we're talking about. So let's assume it's $20 billion. We were fortunate that the leadership, along with a lot of us in the Senate and the House, made the decision that we would save money in the last legislative session, and we did. We set aside in the rainy day fund, which, by the way, the rainy day fund is actually not for a rainy day, but it's really the economic stabilization fund. And that fund has money set away, about $9 billion. Now, there are some in the legislature who believe we should spend the whole $9 billion. This is a time to do that. There are others, like myself, who don't see that, light at the end of the tunnel yet, and we could be in for some serious economic times in the next 2-year cycle, 13-14 as well. So I hope we'll leave some of that rainy day fund also to sit and to increase over the years until 2013. So let's assume we take 5 or 6 billion, maybe a little bit less, maybe between 4 and 5. That still gives you a significant push. The rest of it, I believe, and I think most of my colleagues believe, is going to have to come from cuts. A lot of it will come from priorities. A lot of it will come from making those decisions about programs that we've had or public policy that we've made in the past that we'll go back and change. A lot of it, I think, will come from the fact that we're willing to look at each part of the budget very carefully, and rather than just cut 10% off the top, across the board cuts, I'm hoping that we'll go in and we'll really examine those programs that are either duplications or that haven't been giving us the product that we want at the end of the day, and they're failing us, and we can just cut them out. There will be no new taxes in this budget, in my view. Too many of my colleagues, too many in the leadership, truly believe that we are in a recession. We're in very hard economic times. We need to create jobs. We need to encourage people to move to Texas and bring jobs to Texas. And you can't do that when you keep adding taxes into the mix. So we believe that Texas is a place that needs to have fewer regulations and fewer taxes as a burden on business. Business, after all, is where the jobs are created, not government, as you've heard in the past. So I think what you'll see is a very deliberative Texas Senate and Texas House when it looks at the budget. I think we'll be realistic when we get our real numbers and know what it means, but we can do it. As I said earlier, and believe with my heart, Crisis equals opportunity. Opportunity means cut the fat out of the budget. There's lots of opportunity to do that, and I think this particular legislature is going to be doing just that.
Okay, and then if I can, there's a lot of concern. It seems to be a majority of the attention these days, frankly, is not necessarily on the state problematic nature, but on our national economic concerns. What are you and your peers over in the state legislature, what are you anticipating, or what's your outlook going to be on how to tackle this shortfall in the coming legislative session?
Well, I don't see anything positive in the national economy for quite a while. I think what we just need to do is make sure that we are left to do what we know how to do best. And in Texas, our opportunities are to make this the state of jobs. We know how to do it. We've done it before. We need to continue to do it. It's our byword. If we are given the burden of the federal government with regulations and with opportunities that they believe states ought to do in order to get money from them, we say, we don't want your money. Just leave us alone in Texas. Let us do what we know how to do best, and we'll spend our time in that arena. Don't come to Texas and tell us what we need to do for the federal good. Leave us to take care of Texas on our own.
Well, on that note, Senator, we're going to have to leave it there, folks. I want to say thank you. First of all, Senator, thank you for joining us. Also, thank you for tuning into this edition of Texas Insider TV. Be sure and come back between now and November 2nd for the latest inside scoop. As always, remember, you're either an insider or you're not, and we appreciate you joining us. I'm Jim Cardle for Texas Insider TV.